November 18, 1978, 909 people committed mass suicide by drinking cyanide flavored with Kool-Aid. This happened just after 9 gunmen were sent to an airstrip in Kaituma to kill U.S. Congressman Leo Ryan. This tragedy was led by Reverend Jim Jones, the leader of the cult from San Francisco known as the People's Temple. This, of course, is known as the Jonestown Massacre. Today I will tell you about Jim Jones and a few members of the People's Temple, as well as explain what occurred during and before the killings at both the Kaituma airstrip and the mass suicides at Jonestown. This is Jim Jones, leader of the People's Temple and the person responsible for the Jonestown Massacre. When he was a kid, he grew up in Indiana. He was poor, and he grew up with an alcoholic father and a mother who worked all day to support her family. Because he had such a distant relationship with his family, he grew up with weird habits and obsessions with death and religion. When he was 5, he would do things like kill cats, and then afterwards he would hold funerals for the cats he killed. And because he was so distant with his family, he began to see the church as his own family. This led to him, of course, becoming a reverend at his church, and he was very popular when he became one. He would often hold integrated sermons, which often caused racial tension between the sermons, and the things he would preach were about racial equality for everyone, and creating a paradise. It was around this time when he created the People's Temple, and at that time he thought California was the most progressive state at the time, so he took his congregation to California, where he would create what he thought would be a utopia. It was at California where he rented buses and he would travel all across the country. And he would speak to people, mostly poor people, college students, and elderly people without much money. And he would tell them to come to his utopia in California, and he would make them do things like give them 25% of their earnings, give them their pension. Even sometimes he would make people sell their houses and then give them the money from the houses they sold. So in return, he would do things like take care of them for the rest of their lives. Even one time during a sermon, he handed out punch to everybody and told them that they just drank poison. He lied, but he told them all it was a test of their loyalty to see if they would really do it. Jim Jones was always paranoid, and he bought his way into political power. However, when the newspaper was going to publish an article about the People's Temple that was negative, he then left California to the country of Guyana abruptly overnight, just before the article was published, to create what is known as Jonestown. This is where Guyana is located in South America, and that's where Jonestown was. In Jonestown, people were cut off from the rest of the world, and none of them were allowed to leave. The Jim Jones leaving was betrayal, and the rest of his followers were scared to leave. That was until Congressman Leo Ryan, and as well as several other reporters, visited Jonestown. This is Congressman Leo Ryan. Congressman Ryan was getting complaints from people about their loved ones leaving to Jonestown, and he wanted to go down there to see what it was all about, to make sure nothing bad was going on. So he went to South America to see them all. Of course, Jim Jones, when he found out about this, he was completely paranoid about it, and he told the people to act happy and stuff, and they would have rehearsals for their arrival, so they would seem like it was a perfect place to be. The first night Congressman stayed there, he was completely fooled by it. He thought that everyone there was happy and they were living in this peaceful utopia out in the middle of the jungle. But that was until one of the reporters was mistaken for the congressman and was slipped a note. The note asked him for help. The people there wanted to get out of Jonestown. So But Jim Jones found out about this and he tried to cover it up, saying that people were crazy, that this was all a plot against him. All right, the next day, Congressman Ryan didn't buy it though, so he took all the people away from Jonestown into the airport where they would board a plane back to the United States. And that plane was at the Port Khartoum airstrip. When they were there though, a truck carrying a trailer got there right in front of the airstrip and blocked the plane from taking off. Before the plane could take off, 9 gunmen jumped out and began firing upon the plane. That picture was taken just after the shootings. 9 people died in the shooting, including the congressman. The gunman would later commit suicide in Jonestown. All would die except for one. Meanwhile, knowing what he had done, Jim Jones prepared large buckets of cyanide and poured Kool-Aid into them to try and lessen the bitterness. Jones announced out on a loudspeaker that there was to be a town meeting held immediately and gathered up everyone. When he did that, surrounding the entire town, the armed guards would kill all those trying to escape. Jim Jones told everyone that this was their only choice and that would be considered a revolutionary suicide, and said that if we cannot live in peace, we must die in peace. Not all people wanted to die, and some even tried to protest Jim Jones, but to no avail. While all of this was happening, children were being ripped from their mothers' hands, and cyanide was being forced down their throats. Tim Carter, and this was taken after Jonestown. Tim Carter, a Jonestown survivor, described what he saw. As I walked up to the back of the pavilion, I saw a woman named Rosie on the ground crying, holding her dead baby. There were maybe 8 or 9 other people who were dying or in the process of dying. Inside, I just wanted things to stop. Please just let me catch my breath. Let me figure out what's happening here. I looked to my right and I saw my wife, with our son in her arms and poison being injected into his mouth. My son was dead and he was frothing from the mouth. You know, cyanide makes people froth from the mouth. My wife died in my arms, and my dead baby son was in her arms. And I held her and said, I love you, because it's all I could say. She died in my arms, man. In the end, 909 people died in Jonestown. Jim Jones himself was shot in the head. Today, there's nothing left in Jonestown. All the bodies are gone. All the buildings have been beaten down. Vines and weeds were covered. What was once the place where everything took place. And in the end, Jim Jones wanted this to be remembered as a revolutionary suicide. Rather, it will stand as a warning to all those who are involved in cults.
All right, so Edgar, what did you think?
I thought it was a good presentation. He had his intro, his thesis, it was clearly stated what he was going to say. His visuals were good for what he was saying. And the only problem was that I didn't hear any citations.
Okay. The topic, of course, is very clearly identified, and I think you tell the dramatic story pretty effectively. I think it does tend to be more narrative than anything else, and so as a speech it doesn't always hang together well. As a story, it's a compelling story by itself, and you tell it reasonably well. Everything is chronological. I think we could have used a little bit more background on Jones and the People's Temple. The events that you described when you went through the process of telling the story, that was all sequential and in order, but it doesn't really seem like it's organized into any structure, except it's just the sequence of the story. The visual images are okay. They are large enough to see for the most part, and some of them are pretty dramatic. The pacing occasionally seems awkward. There isn't any citation in the material. It sounds like you've read about it and you're telling the story firsthand, but we're not getting any citation. You mentioned one person who survived, and I'm not sure if that was survived the shooting or survived at Jonestown. If it's the same person that we're talking about later on, that was not very clear. So I think some of the citations needed to be cleared up there. All right, thank you.